Some buildings don't forget, and they never forgive. When a young architect inherits a long-abandoned high-rise in the heart of Chicago, he thinks it's a second chance, but what waits behind the elevator doors isn't decay, it's memory. Twisted, vengeful memory. Inside Andal Court Tower, the walls whisper, the floors breathe, and those who enter, they never really leave. This isn't just another haunted building, it's a ritual, a trap laid in steel and concrete, and it's been waiting for him. So buckle in, keep the lights on, and whatever you do, don't take the elevator to the 9th floor. They say you can hear the screaming if you stand at the edge of the old Sycamore Bridge at midnight. Screams that don't echo, just seep into your bones like cold water. The first time Claire Morgan saw the town of Sycamore Hollow, it didn't feel real. It sat nestled deep within the Appalachians, like something misplaced in time, shrouded in mist even at noon. The GPS had gone dead about 5 miles back, and the narrow road had turned into a series of hair-purned curves, bordered by trees gnarled like arthritic fingers. She kept driving, too far in to turn back, following the hand-drawn map she had printed from the archives of a Tennessee folklore website, half believing, half daring herself to chase a ghost story her grandmother had once whispered about in a shaking voice. Claire wasn't here on a whim. After her grandmother's funeral, she found the bundle of letters tied in old lace-yellowed paper stamped in 1962, all from someone named E.Y., who had written obsessively about the Bell Woman, the Silence Trials, and a cabin where the voices sink. Every letter was postmarked from Sycamore Hollow, a town that officially ceased to exist after 1973. Claire had never heard of it until then. The road ended at a rusted iron gate chained shut, flanked by twin stone pillars so moss-covered they seemed more like gravestones. A faded wooden sign dangled by one nail, reading Sycamore Hollow, 1842. Beneath it, someone had spray-painted in red, "Do not enter after dark." The gate itself looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. She parked on the roadside gravel and slung her canvas bag over her shoulder, stepping through the bent bars of the fence like slipping between ribs. With every step, the hum of the modern world seemed to vanish. No birdsong, no wind. Just the crunch of her boots and a silence so complete it rang in her ears. The first structure she passed was a whitewashed church, its steeple cracked, leaning like it was bowing to something long buried. Inside, the pews were split with rot. Old hymnals lay open, their pages curled like dead leaves. The altar bore a crude symbol, a circle split by a jagged line, etched into the wood as if clawed by human nails. Claire ran her fingers across it. She didn't hear the whisper, not with her ears, but it pulsed inside her head. "Don't let the bell woman see your eyes." She jerked her hand back, stumbling a step. Dust spiraled where she'd moved, dancing in the shaft of light that cut through the broken roof. A rational mind might chalk that up to nerves or suggestion. Claire had always prided herself on not jumping at shadows, but this felt different. The moment she touched that altar, something old and watching stirred in the air around her. She pressed on. The town was barely more than 10 structures. A crumbling post office, a pair of cabins, the remnants of a general store. But what caught her breath was the stone well in the center square. It had no bucket, no crank, just a gaping mouth covered by a thick wooden lid held down with rusted chains. A small plaque embedded in the stone read, "Here was silence bought, here was silence paid. We owe the hollow still." Claire took a photo, then another. Her phone said no service, and yet, when she checked her gallery later, the photos were gone. It was then she heard it. A single chime, low and distant, like an old church bell rung underwater. Not loud, not close, but enough to make her turn in a slow circle. No bell tower in sight. She stood still, pulse quickening. A memory surfaced, uninvited. Her grandmother, age 78, grabbing her wrist during a thunderstorm, whispering, "If you hear the bell at Hollow's gate, don't answer. Just run, baby, just run." Claire shook it off. Old woman fears, childhood myths. She pressed deeper into the town, toward the cabins marked on the map. One of them had to be EY's, maybe even the one mentioned in the letters where the voices sink. The path behind the well was almost overgrown, vines thick enough to conceal the dirt trail. She followed it for maybe half a mile until the trees opened up into a clearing, and there it was. The cabin was 2 stories, built from blackened timber, leaning slightly to one side. Its windows had been boarded from the inside. She stepped onto the porch and knocked once, then again. No answer. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the air was stale and sharp with the scent of earth and mildew. Dust motes danced in every ray of light. Books were stacked in columns floor to ceiling. Symbols carved into the wood above the hearth, one of them matching the one in the church. Claire moved slowly, respectful, like she was in a sacred place. She found the journal on a small table beside a melted candle. Its leather cover bore a name: Elijah Whitmore, 1964. She flipped it open. The first page read, "There are rules to surviving the hollow. Never follow the bell. Never sleep with mirrors uncovered. Never answer a knock after sundown. And above all, if you hear silence, run." Claire read it twice, then a third time. The air around her began to press in, tighter, like the walls were breathing. Outside, the wind picked up, or something like wind, but she couldn't hear leaves rustling. Just a rush of absence. An unnatural hush. She turned her head toward the window and realized with a creeping chill, not a single bird had chirped since she arrived. It was dead silent. And then the knock came. 3 slow raps on the cabin door. Claire froze. The sun hadn't yet set, but something in her bones said don't answer. She crept toward the door, each floorboard betraying her with long groans. Through the peephole she saw no one. But there were footprints in the dirt, barefoot, pointing toward the house, not away. She backed up, heart racing. Another knock, louder this time. And then, from the corner of the room beneath the window, a shape began to rise, as if pulled upward by invisible strings. Thin, too tall, head wrapped in cloth, like a mourning veil. No face, no eyes. And from beneath the veil came a whisper, not spoken aloud, but inside Claire's skull. "You looked at me?" Claire screamed. Claire stumbled backward, slamming her shoulder against the edge of the table, Elijah Whitmore's journal tumbling to the floor. The figure by the window, if it even was a figure, hovered motionless. The veil that hung over its head didn't move, yet Claire could feel the weight of something staring back at her. No eyes, no face, but it saw her. "You looked at me." The words echoed inside her skull like an ache that wouldn't stop throbbing. Claire's fingers found the strap of her canvas bag and tightened. She didn't look away from the thing, not entirely, but she inched toward the back of the cabin, where a narrow hallway led deeper inside. Her breath was loud now, too loud in the room that refused to make sound. Every inhale felt like it didn't belong. She took 1 step, then 2. No reaction from the figure. She reached the hallway and broke into a half-run, boots thudding against the warped wood. There was a door at the end, weather-worn, cracked near the bottom. She shoved it open and stumbled into a cramped bedroom where moth-eaten drapes clung to the windows and a child's wooden chair faced the wall, turned away from the bed. Claire slammed the door shut behind her and pressed her weight against it. Her ears rang, not with sound, but with absence, as if the hollow was feeding on noise, pulling it inward to that well in the center of town, locking every scream and footstep away. She braced herself, waiting for the cabin to creak or shift, for that figure to knock again. Nothing. No footsteps, no whisper. She sank to her knees. Her phone, still in her jacket pocket, was dark. When she pressed the power button, it flickered, then died completely. She hadn't thought to bring a flashlight. That's when she noticed the mirror. It stood in the far corner of the room, taller than her, its surface covered in a linen sheet stained with brown rings, water or something else. The cloth shifted slightly, like something behind it was breathing. Claire didn't move. Her grandmother's voice returned in fragments. "Never sleep with mirrors uncovered. They use reflections to crawl through. A mirror's not a mirror in the hollow. It's a door no one should open." Her throat was dry. She was tired. Her pulse had started to settle into a dull throb beneath her ribs. But the presence was still here, still watching, even if unseen. She got up slowly and walked toward the mirror. The cloth fluttered again. Claire paused, heart thundering now, and whispered, "No, not yet." She turned the chair around, placing it directly in front of the mirror, and sat, back straight, eyes forward, refusing to uncover it. The air in the room grew heavy. A cold draft slid across the back of her neck. She turned instinctively. Nothing. But the scent had changed. No longer mildew and wood dust, but something more coppery, sharp, like rusted metal left too long in water. Blood? She got up again, driven by instinct and dread, and opened the dresser beside the mirror. Inside, bones. Not full skeletons, just finger bones wrapped in twine, each one marked with a symbol burned into the bone itself. The same circle, with a slash from the church and Elijah's journal. She shut the drawer with a gasp. Back outside, in the main room, she heard the sound of pages turning. Not loud, not frantic, but steady. Flip, flip, flip. The figure was reading. Claire couldn't explain how she knew that. Only that the sound was unmistakable, and it came from a presence that didn't belong here. Or maybe it did. Maybe she was the one intruding. She opened the door a crack. The figure stood at the table again. The journal was open. Its cloth-wrapped head was bent low, too far, unnaturally far, as if reading with eyes it didn't have. And then it turned its head toward her. The veil didn't move. No face emerged, but something inside the veil shifted. A voice echoed again inside her skull. "You read the rules. Now you are part of them." Claire slammed the door again, heart slamming against her ribs. She backed away, thinking wildly, what did that mean, part of them? She hadn't broken any rules, had she? The bell, the silence, the mirror, the knock. The knock. Never answer a knock after sundown. But she hadn't answered, had she? She tried to remember. The timeline in her head was fraying. What time was it now? Her phone was dead. The light outside had turned a murky gray, shadows long and soft like velvet. Claire returned to the drawer of bones and pulled one out with trembling fingers. The twine was sticky. Old blood? Something darker? She didn't know. At the base of the bone, beneath the burned-in symbol, something was etched in ink. A name, barely legible. Whitmore. Her fingers slipped, and the bone fell. When it hit the floor, the room shook just slightly, and the mirror cloth slipped, revealing a crack of polished glass. Claire stared at it. Nothing moved in the reflection. No veiled figure. No Claire either. The mirror was empty. And then from behind her, the journal snapped shut. Claire spun, but the room was empty. No figure. No sound. Only the mirror and her reflection slowly bleeding into it, as if the glass were remembering her in real time, rebuilding her shape piece by piece. Too slowly, too wrong. Her mouth moved in the reflection, but she hadn't said anything. The reflection spoke first. "Don't run." Claire turned to flee, too late. The mirror shattered outward. They say, when the bell rings a second time, it isn't to warn you, it's to claim you. Claire woke in the dirt. Her back ached. Splinters dug into her palms. Her head swam with nausea, and there was a strange weight pressing against her chest, like something had climbed inside her lungs during sleep and nested there. She was no longer in the cabin. Above her, trees twisted into shapes that shouldn't exist, not bent by wind or time, but carved, as if some great hand had curled the branches inward into runes. The air smelled thick with pine, rotting apples, and smoke. Not burning wood, no. Something raw, animal. A trail of broken mirror shards led from her feet to a tree stump just 10 paces ahead. Each shard reflected a different sky, night, dusk, moonless void, blood-red morning. None matched the murky dawn above her. Claire sat up. There was no wound on her body, no blood, but her skin felt foreign, as if her bones had been rearranged slightly during the night. She looked around. The woods were silent. The type of silence that felt intentional, staged, as if all the birds had agreed to hold their breath for something more ancient to speak first. And then the bell rang, far off, hollow. Once, her ears vibrated with it, the same sound she'd heard back in town square, except now it was deeper, like the bell tower had sunk beneath the earth and rung from its grave. Claire rose to her feet, ignoring the dull throb in her knees, and followed the shards. Each one seemed freshly placed, too clean, too deliberate, as though something had laid a path just for her. Each time she looked into one, her face changed, aging, bleeding, disappearing. The final shard reflected her wearing a white veil, head tilted at an unnatural angle, as if her neck had been snapped. She kicked it aside. The trail ended at the remnants of a rotted carriage, half buried in moss and vines, its wheels missing, doors flung open. Inside, a figure sat motionless. Claire's breath caught. A girl, pale, no older than 16, hair cascading down in dark, wet strands. Her hands were clasped in her lap, holding something small, wooden between her fingers. A bell, miniature, rusted. Claire stepped closer. "Hello? Are you okay?" The girl didn't move. Claire knelt by the carriage door, her fingers inching toward the bell. As she reached out, the girl's head jerked upright. "No," the girl whispered. Claire froze. "You can't take it. It's not for you." Claire drew back. "What is this place? Why did the mirror—" "You crossed it," the girl interrupted, her voice hoarse. "When the glass broke, you're not in Sycamore Hollow anymore. You're under it." Claire stared. "The mirror's a gate," the girl continued. "Only opens when the hollow wants it to. You woke it. You looked when you shouldn't have." Claire's skin prickled. "Who are you?" The girl blinked. "Sarah." The name struck her. It matched the one she'd seen etched beneath the chapel portrait. Sarah Widmore, the missing daughter. "But you've been gone for decades. Time doesn't move here," Sarah said, glancing at the woods. "Not like it should. And it's not just the hollow anymore. It's him. The bell man." Claire swallowed. "The man in the veil?" Sarah nodded slowly. "He marks those who listen, those who look. Every rule in town keeps you safe from seeing him too clearly. Break enough, and you don't come back." Claire stepped back from the carriage, mind racing. "How do I leave? I didn't mean to break anything. I was only trying to understand." "He doesn't care what you meant." Sarah's eyes darkened. "You're already in the second ring now." "Ring?" Sarah pointed toward the woods. Claire turned. Far off, half concealed by fog, stood a stone arch, crumbling, covered in moss and markings. Beneath it, a trail dipped down into shadow. Something about it felt ancient and hungry. "The hollow's built in layers," Sarah said. "The town, the woods, the ring of mirrors, the field of teeth. And then," she hesitated, "the bell house." Claire's lips trembled. "What happens in the bell house?" "That's where he waits." Claire looked back at her. "Then I won't go there. You won't have a choice." A gust of wind blew through the woods, and Sarah's bell rang once, high and clear, though unmoving. The girl gasped. Claire lunged forward. What is it?" Sarah gripped the bell with white-knuckled fingers. "He knows you're here now." A shadow moved beyond the trees, not walking, not slithering, just arriving, like an absence in the shape of a man. Claire grabbed Sarah's wrist. "Come with me." But Sarah shook her head. "I'm already tethered. I've been here too long. I just wanted someone to know, someone who might still run before it's too late." "I won't leave you," Claire said, her voice raw. "You will," Sarah whispered, eyes filling with something between sadness and warning, "when you hear him speak." Claire turned, heart pounding, as the woods around them began to darken, not from night, but from presence. A weight in the air, a bending of the trees, and from somewhere between her ears and her bones, a voice, deep, impossible, and close. "Claire." It didn't echo. It didn't rise. It arrived. She turned toward the voice, and her shadow didn't follow. It stood still, facing the other way. Claire didn't scream, not because she wasn't terrified, but because something inside her understood. Screaming would tell him where she was. Her shadow stood perfectly still, cast in the wrong direction, frozen in place like a paper cutout glued to the world. Claire stepped backward slowly, trying not to blink. Tara was gone. The bell lay silent on the carriage floor, and all around her the woods were thick with the scent of turned earth, and something even fouler, wet copper and old breath. The voice had spoken her name, but not aloud. It had spoken inside her, as if her bones were hollow and the syllables had been poured into them like molten lead, not in sync, but in protest. Claire didn't wait to see what it would do next. She turned and ran. The forest blurred past. Trees leaned closer. Roots rose unnaturally, like hands trying to trip her. The sky above had shifted into a bruised violet, and the light between the branches pulsed with irregular rhythm. Not natural light, not from a sun, more like the flicker of an unseen eye, opening and closing with every heartbeat she couldn't control. She broke into a clearing. Ahead stood the archway Sarah had pointed to. It looked older now, bigger, like it had grown in the minutes since she'd last seen it. The carvings writhed when she didn't look directly at them, and the ground beneath the arch was scorched in a perfect circle. Claire slowed as she reached it, panting. The pressure behind her eyes pulsed. She felt as though her mind were unspooling thread by thread, but she stepped forward anyway, because something worse was behind her. The moment she crossed the arch, sound disappeared. Not silence, just nothing. No breath, no heartbeat, not even the rustle of leaves. Her feet moved, but she heard no step. Her hands clutched the edges of her jacket, but the fabric made no sound. Even the distant tolling of the bell, gone. She looked back. The forest was still there, but distant, muted, as though she'd passed behind a pane of glass and the world outside had become someone else's reflection, and in front of her now was the field of teeth. She understood the name the moment she saw it. No one had spoken it aloud, but it pulsed in her thoughts like an inherited memory. The field was white and endless, the soil made of crushed bone and root systems that spiraled like veins beneath exposed jawbones. Teeth of every shape and size stuck up from the earth. Molars, canines, fangs, some human, most not. Claire swallowed. Her breath returned in tiny gasps, but her hearing didn't. She stepped carefully. Each crunch of bone underfoot should have been deafening, but all she felt was the vibration of it through her knees. The air smelled sterile, clinical, like a place that had been cleaned repeatedly, not out of hygiene, but to erase evidence. Something moved beneath the surface. She knelt beside a mound where a set of baby teeth were clustered like mushrooms. One of them twitched. Claire leaned closer, eyes narrowing. A soft click, click, click buzzed at the edge of perception, like 1,000 tiny jaws snapping in rhythm. Then something broke the surface. A hand, but not quite a hand. 6 fingers, the texture of melted wax, dragging upward before vanishing again. Claire stumbled back, heartbeat slamming against her ribs. She turned and saw the chapel. Except it wasn't. Not the one from the town square. This was its reflection, warped, blackened, leaning to one side like a broken tooth. Its windows were hollow, its door was ajar, and a trail of blood led from the entrance across the field. Claire followed, because what else could she do? Inside, the chapel pulsed with heat. The floorboards were slick with something she refused to name, and the pews were filled with dolls, human-sized, dressed in Sunday best, all missing their faces. Their heads were turned toward the altar where a single object rested, a mirror, unbroken. Claire approached. In its surface she saw herself, aged 20 years, her hair gray, her mouth sewn shut, her hands raw and red, holding a bell. She blinked. Now the reflection was her father, crying, alone. She blinked again. It was her brother's face now, missing since she was 14. He mouthed words she couldn't hear, then screamed soundlessly before vanishing in a wash of static. And behind her, in the reflection's depths, he appeared. No veil this time, just eyes. Endless, knowing, watching. She spun around, nothing. When she looked back, the mirror had cracked, but not shattered, just one long crack, straight down the center like a spine being split, and behind it something knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. Claire backed away, but she couldn't. Her feet were rooted to the floor. Her reflection no longer mirrored her movements. It stood completely still, watching her with its own expression, one she didn't recognize. Then, slowly, it raised its hand and touched the glass from the inside. The crack spread. The mirror bled. And the bell above the altar rang once, deep, final, and close enough to feel in her teeth. Claire screamed, and the dolls in the pews screamed with her. But her scream didn't echo, because it wasn't real anymore. They say the wind doesn't howl here, it whistles, like it's trying to lure something out of hiding. Claire awoke on a cold stone floor, her cheek pressed against damp mineral and the tang of blood in her mouth. She didn't know how long she had been unconscious, only that her fingers were trembling and the mirror was gone. The chapel had vanished, or perhaps she had been moved. The only illumination came from thin slits in the ceiling above, moonlight leaking through jagged holes like a mouth full of broken teeth. She sat up slowly, heart pounding, and found herself inside what looked like a burial chamber. The walls were carved with names, not in Latin or English, but a twisted, looping script that coiled like worms across the rock. Some of the names throbbed faintly, as if aware of being seen. There was no door, but there was a tunnel, narrow, carved downward, lined with bones. Claire didn't hesitate. She couldn't afford to. With the mirror gone and a reflection freed, or worse, released, every second here felt borrowed. She whispered Sarah's name once, then again, softer, as she slipped into the tunnel's throat. The descent was steep, and the bones that lined the passage cracked underfoot, releasing musty air and the sound of voices, overlapping, whispering in tongues she almost understood. "You can't follow if you don't turn." Don't name him. Names give teeth. Bells keep time, but shadows keep promises. Claire's hand brushed the wall. It was warm. No, alive. Veins pulsed beneath the stone. She recoiled, slipped, and landed hard in a puddle of stagnant water at the bottom of the shaft. A faint light glowed ahead, flickering and low, like gaslight from a time long before her own. She emerged into Whistler's Hollow. A village underground. Not ruins. Not remains. A place still living somehow. Homes of warped timber and sagging roofs. Chimneys that exhaled fog but no smoke. Windows with eyes behind them, but not people. The air was thick with the scent of wood rot, wet clay, and the metallic tinge of something recently flayed. Claire took a step forward, and the whistling began. It wasn't the wind. It came from everywhere, yet always behind her. A melody, soft and off-key, childlike, the kind of whistle you'd make walking home from school, not knowing something followed. She turned. Nothing. She turned again. Still nothing. But she felt it. A presence pressing the air flat. A thing too close to see, and yet always a step behind. She hurried toward the largest structure, a crooked inn with a sagging sign. The Mourner's Respite. The door creaked open at her touch. Inside, the smell of tea and mold warred for dominance. The inn's common room was lit by oil lanterns, their flames swimming strangely in the glass. At a round table in the corner sat a woman with no mouth, knitting with fingers that left smears of ink on the yarn. She didn't look up, but someone else did. From the shadows of the staircase, a man stepped out. He was tall, lean, and dressed like a forest ranger from a century ago. His uniform was tattered, badged, long corroded, and his face bore the calm exhaustion of someone who had been awake too long in a place without days. "Too early," he said. His voice was smooth but layered, like he was speaking in duet with a version of himself buried deeper. "They don't usually make it to the hollow until the third bell." Claire stared at him. "Who are you?" He gave a small, tired smile. Oscar, or what's left of him. You were with the team, she said slowly. The survey crew? I was the team. He gestured to the bar where 4 hard hats hung on a rack, each with a nameplate. Only one of them glowed faintly. Oscar's. The Hollow doesn't like company, he murmured. But it needs visitors, just enough to remember itself. You've been marked, Claire. She stiffened. I never told you my name. He nodded toward the ceiling. They whisper more than you think, and your shadow's been here longer than you have. Claire's skin crawled. Where's Sarah? Probably in the latch house, he said, voice lowering. That's where the taken go. I need to find her. He gave her a look of pure sorrow. You need to find the bell first. Claire hesitated. The one from the chapel? No, the first bell. The one they buried to keep it silent. You'll know it when you hear it. It rings through bone, through time. The knitting woman suddenly stopped. Her yarn fell to the floor, and the whistling outside changed. Sharper, closer. Oscar moved quickly, drawing a blade that shimmered like obsidian. Don't open the windows, he whispered, and don't follow the whistle. It knows your voice now. Claire backed toward the stairs, but before she could climb, the front door slammed open. The wind rushed in, and so did something else. It didn't have a form, not yet. Just a pressure, a scent of dead lilac, and the sound of whistling filling the room like smoke. The mouthless woman screamed without sound and vanished in a blink of soot. The lanterns went black, and the last thing Claire saw before the darkness swallowed her was Oscar whispering, "Whatever happens next, don't say its name." The world vanished into darkness, but Claire didn't fall. She floated, suspended in a pitch-black space that pulsed like the inside of a lung. The whistling had stopped, replaced by a rhythm she couldn't explain. Not quite a heartbeat, not quite a clock. It sounded like tapping, distant but constant, like something scratching at the inside of a coffin. She reached for the floor, for a wall, for anything, but the space around her refused to be touched. Then came the bell. Not a chime, not a ring. A hum. It started low in her spine and climbed her vertebrae like cold mercury. Her teeth ached. Her vision sparked behind closed lids, though there was no light to see. When she opened her eyes again, she was no longer floating. She was standing in front of a mirror, but not her mirror. This one was taller, older, carved from obsidian, with a frame of bone and brass. It stood alone in the middle of a field under a black sky, and in the reflection Claire wasn't alone. Behind her stood a child, or something shaped like one. "Claire!" it whispered in Sarah's voice. But the voice was too slow, like it had been pulled through molasses and filtered through sleep. Claire turned, no one there. The figure in the mirror still stared. "Where are you?" she asked. It smiled. Then the world twisted. The mirror shattered, not into shards, but into teeth. Dozens of them, jagged and yellowed, clattering to the ground in place of glass. Claire stumbled backward into shadow and woke up screaming. Oscar was kneeling beside her in the inn cellar. "You're lucky," he said, holding a lantern close. "It didn't take your name." She sat up, head pounding. "What the hell was that?" He hesitated. A reflection that learned to walk. Claire stood, unsteady. The whistling had gone silent. "I need to find Sarah," she said. "Take me to the latch house." Oscar flinched. "No one goes there unless they've been chosen. And those who enter don't usually—" "She's my sister," Claire cut in. Oscar stared at her, then nodded slowly. "Then we'd better hurry." They exited through a side passage behind the inn, winding down crooked streets where lanterns sputtered and windows slammed shut as they passed. The village moved with them. That was the only way Claire could describe it. Buildings shifted slightly when she blinked. Paths curved differently than before. Whistler's Hollow wasn't just inhabited, it was alive. The latch house stood at the edge of the village, tethered to a cliff of bone that overlooked a black chasm with no bottom. The house was built from doors, hundreds of them, stacked and nailed together, each with its own knob and hinge. Some were child-sized, some were so narrow only a whisper could pass through. Claire stepped forward. The air here hummed, like strings vibrating in the back of her skull. Oscar handed her a key. "It only opens one door," he said, "and only once." Claire took it. "What happens if I pick the wrong one?" Oscar didn't answer. She climbed the creaking steps and walked the length of the facade. Each door pulsed faintly when she passed, reacting to her presence. Some tried to open on their own. One bled from its keyhole. Another wept a single tear down its wood. She stopped in front of a narrow green door. The key pulled her hand. She inserted it, turned. The door opened not into a room but into a forest. Black trees, purple sky, the sound of glass breaking with every step she took. The air was thick with memory, sharp with grief. She recognized it instantly. Sarah's dream. She had seen it before, when Sarah sleep-talked as a child, muttering about trees with no leaves and voices inside bark. Claire stepped through. The door vanished behind her. The forest wasn't silent. It sang, low and cruel, in voices she almost knew. Her father's laugh, her mother's final scream, Oscar's whisper, "Don't say its name." Claire walked, fighting nausea. The ground crunched beneath her feet, not leaves, but broken faces, like porcelain dolls. And then she saw her, Sarah, standing at the edge of a pool so still it looked like glass, her back to Claire. "Sarah!" No response. Claire ran. The closer she got, the more the air warped. It bent light. It bent sound. She reached out, and her hand passed through her sister. Not a hallucination, not a memory, but a copy. The false Sarah turned, and its face opened like a flower. Rows of teeth, eyes along its collarbone, a voice that sounded like everyone Claire had ever lost. It spoke one word, "Stay." Claire screamed, and the forest answered. From the trees, dozens of figures emerged. Children, adults, corpses with faces borrowed from old photographs. They all wore smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Some held mirrors, others held bells. Claire turned to run, and the trees moved. She was no longer in a forest. She was back inside the latch house, but the walls were breathing, and Oscar was gone. A single bell hung from the ceiling, upside down, leaking blood. Claire looked down and saw the green door again, lying flat like a trapdoor. She opened it without thinking and fell, down through layers of light and bone and song, and landed in a room she recognized from memory but not reality. The bedroom they shared as children, except Sarah was there, real, breathing, bound to the wall by chains of hair. Her eyes snapped open. "Claire," she rasped, and then she screamed, "It followed you in!" The moment Claire heard her sister scream, something inside her snapped. Not in the way people broke under pressure. This was cleaner, sharper, like a blade being pulled from a sheath. For the first time since setting foot in Whistler's Hollow, she stopped hesitating. She ran. The chains of hair binding Sarah seemed to react as she approached, tightening, knotting, hissing like dry grass, set alight. Claire reached out, fingers trembling, and touched one. It recoiled with a squeal, slithering back across the wall like a severed nerve. "Hold on," Claire cried. "I'm going to get you out." Sarah was pale, thinner than Claire remembered, eyes ringed with bruised shadows, but still her, still breathing. "They come when the bell tolls," Sarah whispered. "Don't let it ring again." Claire's stomach twisted. What bell? A clang sounded above them, heavy and metallic, the kind of sound that echoes in stone and bone, the sound that summons. The room shifted, no longer their childhood bedroom. The corners blurred, the floor stretched, distorting into a vast stone circle ringed with carved columns. Chains hung from each one like vines, some empty, some not. People dangled from the restraints, lifeless, pale, mouths open in eternal screams. Above, the bell tolled again. Claire turned to see a massive bronze bell hanging upside down from the vaulted ceiling, suspended by nothing. Beneath it, an altar shaped like an hourglass dripped something dark between its halves. Blood, ink, Memory? It didn't matter. Sarah was trying to sit up. The hair chains wrapped tighter around her wrists. Claire pulled a shard of mirror from her coat pocket, a souvenir from the shattered room earlier, and slashed at the chains. Sparks flew, and one of the bindings snapped, curling in on itself like a dying worm. Another clang, louder now, closer. The other prisoners stirred. Some began to moan, others began to speak, not words, but names, whispered, one after another. Names Claire didn't know, names that didn't belong to her, until one did. Claire. She froze. Claire Evelyn Alden, one of the hanging corpses rasped. Its eyes snapped open. Another bell toll. From the shadows behind the columns, something began to emerge. Not walking, not crawling. It flowed, a shape like a shadow given hunger. Antlers made of roots, a mouth that stretched from where a throat might have been to where a navel should be. No eyes, only teeth. It didn't walk toward her. It drifted. Sarah whimpered. Claire took the mirror shard and began cutting the remaining chains. One by one they fell. Sarah collapsed into her arms. "Come on," Claire said. "We're leaving." Sarah's eyes widened. "You broke the chains." "Yes." "You weren't supposed to. That's not how you leave." Claire didn't answer. She turned and saw the tolling thing up close. Its breath smelled of rotting roses and ocean rot. It exhaled into her mind more than her face, and it knew her. It raised one tendril and pointed, not at Claire, but at Sarah. The room twisted. The altar glowed. The upside-down bell shook. Sarah gasped. "It's ringing for me." "No!" Claire pulled her sister behind her. "She's not yours." The thing paused, then smiled, not with its mouth, but with the folds of its shape. Its body opened, revealing hundreds of tiny bells embedded in its flesh, each one shaped like a face, some of them recognizable. Claire's fourth-grade teacher, the cashier from the gas station off Route 9, a friend from college she'd lost touch with. Every bell was someone she'd forgotten, and they all began to toll. Claire screamed, clutched Sarah, and ran into the wall, except the wall wasn't a wall. It became a corridor. A hallway lined with doors just like the ones on the latch house, each one labeled not with numbers but with moments. First tooth, first lie, first blood. She yanked Sarah along, dodging the bell chimes that echoed closer and closer. Behind them, the tolling thing wasn't chasing, it was guiding, like a shepherd. Claire stopped in front of a door that pulsed when she reached it. It read, "First loss." Sarah grabbed her arm. "No, don't open that one. It's the only one reacting to me," Claire said. "It's a trap." "I know," and she opened it anyway. Light exploded. Claire and Sarah stumbled out, not into another dreamscape, but into a cemetery, one Claire remembered well. Gravel crunched beneath her boots. The air was sharp with lilacs and iron. She turned slowly, and there it was, a grave with her name on it. Claire Evelyn Alden, born 1990, died 2007. She heard the call. Sarah dropped to her knees. "I told you," she whispered. "You never came back from the lake." The world darkened again. From behind the headstone, a second Claire rose. But her eyes were black, her mouth sewn shut, and the mirror shard she held glowed like moonlight. The moment Claire heard her sister scream, something inside her snapped. Not in the way people broke under pressure. It was cleaner, sharper, like a blade being pulled from a sheath. For the first time since setting foot in Whistler's Hollow, she stopped hesitating. She ran. The chains of hair binding Seraph seemed to react as she approached, tightening, knotting, hissing like dry grass set alight. Claire reached out, fingers trembling, and touched one. It recoiled with a squeal, slithering back across the wall like a severed nerve. "Hold on," Claire cried. "I'm going to get you out." Sarah was pale, thinner than Claire remembered, eyes ringed with bruised shadows, but still her, still breathing. "They come when the bell tolls," Sarah whispered. "Don't let it ring again." Claire's stomach twisted. What bell? A clang sounded above them, heavy and metallic. The kind of sound that echoes in stone and bone, the sound that summons. The room shifted, no longer their childhood bedroom. The corners blurred, the floor stretched, distorting into a vast stone circle ringed with carved columns. Chains hung from each one like vines, some empty, some not. People dangled from the restraints, lifeless, pale, mouths open in eternal screams. Above, the bell tolled again. Claire turned to see a massive bronze bell hanging upside down from the vaulted ceiling, suspended by nothing. Beneath it, an altar shaped like an hourglass dripped something dark between its halves. Blood, ink, memory, it didn't matter. Sarah was trying to sit up. The hair chains wrapped tighter around her wrists. Claire pulled a shard of mirror from her coat pocket, a souvenir from the shattered room earlier, and slashed at the chains. Sparks flew and one of the bindings snapped, curling in on itself like a dying worm. Another clang, louder now, closer. The other prisoners stirred. Some began to moan. Others began to speak, not words, but names. Whispered, one after another. Names Claire didn't know, names that didn't belong to her. Until one did. Claire. She froze. Claire Evelyn Alden, one of the hanging corpses rasped. Its eyes snapped open. Another bell toll. From the shadows behind the columns, something began to emerge. Not walking, not crawling. It flowed, a shape like a shadow given hunger. Antlers made of roots. A mouth that stretched from where a throat might have been to where a navel should be. No eyes, only teeth. It didn't walk toward her, it drifted. Sarah whimpered. Claire took the mirror shard and began cutting the remaining chains. One by one, they fell. Sarah collapsed into her arms. "Come on," Claire said. "We're leaving." Sarah's eyes widened. "You broke the chains." "Yes, you weren't supposed to. That's not how you leave." Claire didn't answer. She turned and saw the tolling thing up close. Its breath smelled of rotting roses and ocean rot, and exhaled into her mind more than her face, and it knew her. It raised one tendril and pointed, not at Claire, but at Sarah. The room twisted. The altar glowed. The upside-down bell shook. Sarah gasped. "It's ringing for me." "No!" Claire pulled her sister behind her. "She's not yours." The thing paused, then smiled, not with its mouth, but with the folds of its shape. Its body opened, revealing hundreds of tiny bells embedded in its flesh, each one shaped like a face, some of them recognizable. Claire's fourth-grade teacher, the cashier from the gas station off Route 9, a friend from college she'd lost touch with. Every bell was someone she'd forgotten, and they all began to toll. Claire screamed, clutched Sarah, and ran into the wall. Except the wall wasn't a wall. It became a corridor, a hallway lined with doors, just like the ones on the latch house. Each one labeled not with numbers, but with moments. First tooth, first lie, first blood. She yanked Sarah along, dodging the bell chimes that echoed closer and closer. Behind them, the tolling thing wasn't chasing, it was guiding, like a shepherd. Claire stopped in front of a door that pulsed when she reached it. It read, "First loss." Sarah grabbed her arm. "No, don't open that one." "It's the only one reacting to me," Claire said. "It's a trap." "I know," and she opened it anyway. Light exploded. Claire and Sarah stumbled out, not into another dreamscape, but into a cemetery. One Claire remembered well. Gravel crunched beneath her boots. The air was sharp with lilacs and iron. She turned slowly, and there it was, a grave with her name on it. Claire Evelyn Alden, born 1990, died 2007. She heard the call. Sarah dropped to her knees. "I told you," she whispered. "You never came back from the lake." The world darkened again. From behind the headstone, a second Claire rose, but her eyes were black, her mouth sewn shut, and the mirror shard she held glowed like moonlight. The second Claire stood motionless beside the gravestone, her head tilted just enough to feel unnatural. The stitched mouth curved ever so slightly upward. Whether in mockery or sorrow, Claire couldn't tell. Sarah clung to her, whispering prayers that crumbled on her lips. "She's you," Sarah said. but not. No. She's the version I became when I didn't wake up. Claire's voice was hoarse, a shadow of me that stayed. The second Claire raised the mirror shard, and the surface shimmered. Not like glass, but like water. Ripples spread across it, forming images, fractured memories. Claire and Sarah playing in the woods, their mother reading to them at night. The lake, still and silver, and Claire floating face down while Sarah screamed from the dock. "She's showing you the memory," Sarah whispered. "You drowned?" "No," Claire said. "I was pulled under." And that's when the bells returned, but not the grand ceremonial toll of the tolling thing. These were smaller, whispery, like chimes hanging from branches. They clinked and rattled around them, invisible in the air. With each note, Claire felt the weight of the place pressed down on her chest. The cemetery was shifting. The gravestones grew taller, names blurred, trees bowed inward like mourners at a wake. Claire moved forward with slow, gliding steps, never blinking, never looking away. "What does she want?" Sarah asked. "I don't know," Claire said, even as something deep inside her answered, "To take your place." The stitched-mouthed doppelganger held the mirror out, as if offering it. Claire stared at it and saw herself reflected, but not as she was now. The image showed her younger, drowned, tangled in reeds, eyes open and empty. "She wants me to remember," Claire said. "Then don't," Sarah said, yanking her away. "We have to go," the second Claire screamed, or tried to. The sound that burst from her stitched mouth was not a voice but a bell, high-pitched, metallic, and piercing. The thread holding her lips unraveled as the scream grew louder, opening her mouth into an inhuman gash. From inside poured a swarm of black hair, writhing like eels. It launched toward them. Claire shoved Sarah aside and raised her arm to block. The hair wrapped around her wrist, burning cold, leaching heat and memory. She slashed at it with her own shard, cutting into her skin as well as the hair, but it worked. The swarm recoiled, retreating into the ground like worms into soil. The stitched mouth Claire began to dissolve, piece by piece, into the gravestone. Her form bled into the name engraved there, and as it vanished, the stone cracked down the center. A gasp of wind swept the cemetery, and with it the illusion began to peel away. Claire and Sarah stood again in the tolling room, but now it was empty. No altar, no chains, no corpses. Just the bell, hanging upside down, completely silent. And in its place stood the one person Claire did not expect to see. "Mom?" Their mother looked younger than Claire remembered, no gray in her hair, no creases at her eyes. She wore the same dress she'd been buried in. Sarah stepped back. "That's not her." Claire wanted to believe otherwise. "Claire," the woman said, voice soft and warm. "You were never supposed to come back." Claire's throat tightened. "Who are you?" The woman smiled. "I'm the voice that answered when you knocked." Behind her, a doorway appeared, just a rectangle of black, suspended in the air. From it came a gentle tolling, deep and slow, like a heartbeat. "I don't want this," Claire said. "Whatever this is, I didn't ask for it." "You opened the first door," the woman said. "You followed the path. You broke the chains. This place has rules, Claire, and you are unraveling them." The bell above pulsed faintly. "You still don't understand, do you?" the woman added. "Each toll isn't just a sound, it's a choice." Claire narrowed her eyes. "Then what happens if it tolls again?" The woman stepped aside, gesturing to the door. "One more toll, and the hollow becomes yours." Sarah grabbed Claire's hand. "No, don't listen to her, she's lying." But Claire couldn't tear her eyes away from the darkness beyond the door. Something about it called to her, not with threat, but with familiarity, like a dream she used to have every night and forgot the moment she woke. The bell trembled, and then it rang. Once, long and low. The ground beneath them cracked open. From the floor surged a forest, not trees, but columns of hair, thick and matted, growing upward like roots in reverse. The tolling room dissolved around them, replaced by a grove of living strands that twitched and pulsed. The woman's voice echoed. "Choose, Claire. Become the bell, or become the toll." Claire turned to Sarah. "We have to run." Sarah didn't respond. She was frozen, her eyes white, her mouth moving without sound. Her skin turned pale as ash, her veins darkening beneath it. "Sarah!" Claire rushed to her, grabbing her by the shoulders. Sarah's lips finally parted. "She's ring inside me." Then Sarah collapsed, and as Claire caught her, the final sound came, not from the bell above, but from within Sarah's chest. A tiny bell rang once, clear, inevitable. Sarah's lips finally parted. "She's ring inside me." Then Sarah collapsed, and as Claire caught her, the final sound came, not from the bell above, but from within Sarah's chest. A tiny bell rang once, clear, inevitable. Somewhere deep beneath the silence, Claire heard the sound of her sister's heart tolling like a distant bell. She sat hunched in the corner of a dim hallway, cradling Sarah's limp body, unable to tell if she was breathing or dreaming or somewhere in between. The corridor was wrong in that way nightmares always are. The colors slightly off, the walls bending inward like ribs, and the ceiling far too high, vanishing into darkness. They were no longer in the tolling room that had been swallowed. No doors, no exits. Only this corridor, veined with black hair that pulsed faintly beneath the surface of the stone like something alive. Sarah's skin had changed, not all at once but subtly. Her arms had grown too pale, almost translucent. Beneath the skin, something shifted like ripples in murky water. Claire had whispered her name 100 times already. Each time, Sarah seemed closer to waking, and then drifted again into stillness, lips moving without sound, eyes fluttering. Claire clutched the mirror shard still clutched in her own palm, its edge crusted with her blood. A shadow moved at the far end of the corridor. Claire froze. Not footsteps, not breathing, just movement, like the space itself was rearranging to let something through. And then came the whisper. Not in English, not in any human tongue, but she understood it. "You already heard the first toll. Now you belong to the house." Claire stood slowly, her legs shaking. She dragged Sarah's body behind a jutting pillar of bone-white stone and pressed herself against it. Her own heartbeat thudded like a drum. She watched as the shadow formed into a figure, tall, thin, clothed in silk bandages, head to toe, like some ancient mummy. But instead of a face, there was a metal mask, circular with a slit like a mouth, and from it protruded a small bell, swinging gently from side to side as it walked. The creature made no sound. It only carried a long tuning fork, carved of wood and bone, that it tapped against the walls every few steps. Each tap sent a note through the air, a resonant vibration that passed through Claire's chest and made her bones feel like they'd shiver apart. Sarah stirred at the third note. She let out a breath, a broken rasp, and opened her eyes. They were glassy, silvery, as if reflecting something behind Claire. And then she spoke. "Claire, don't let them tune me." Claire's stomach dropped. "What are you talking about? Who?" "They're trying to ring me from the inside," Sarah whispered. "That's how it spreads. That's how they take root." Claire gripped her tighter. "You're not going anywhere." The masked figure paused. It turned toward them, tilting its head like an owl, and then it vanished. Not like disappearing, more like skipping frames in a film. It was just suddenly standing 5 feet closer. Claire swallowed the scream in her throat. She grabbed Sarah, forcing her to her feet. "We move! Now!" Sarah could barely stand, but Claire pulled her forward. They staggered through the corridor, each step dragging hair and bone beneath their feet. Behind them, the tuning fork rang out again and again. With each strike, the air grew tighter. Claire could feel her teeth vibrating. They turned a corner and found a mirror standing in the hallway, not mounted, freestanding, tall, framed in rusted metal, and studded with bells all around its edge. Claire stopped. Inside the mirror, she saw herself, but not just her. She saw all of them. Sarah, the doppelganger in the cemetery, the drowned child in the lake, their mother, smiling through tears, and finally, the tolling thing. Its shape was indistinct, like static, a silhouette. Yet the bells around the mirror shook violently just by its image. Claire reached forward, compelled, drawn, but Sarah grabbed her wrist. "No, that's how they ring you," she said. "Once you let the mirror finish a reflection, it tolls." Claire blinked. "What?" "They told me that, in the in-between, where I went when the bell entered me. The mirror reflects your future. Your price." Claire looked again. Her reflection's lips moved, but didn't match her own. The reflection whispered, "The fifth toll is for the one who answers." A crack split the mirror from the base to the top. Then came the voice, not from the hallway, not from the mirror, from within Claire's chest. "You broke the chains," it said. "Now break the house." Claire stumbled back. The mirror shattered all at once into dust. Behind it, a doorway opened. Not a normal one. It was stitched shut with hair, long and black, crossing in X's, as though the hallway itself had tried to seal it off. Something thudded on the other side. Again and again. Claire looked at Sarah, who nodded weakly. "If that's the only way out," she said, "we don't have a choice." Together they approached the stitched door. The final thud came, louder, harder, and then the hair began to unravel. The hair thread seam across the door writhed, as if it were alive, reacting to some signal from the other side. One by one the strands began to unlace, slipping free with faint, wet snicks, leaving a gaping darkness in their wake. The stench of mildew, iron, and something older than rot bled out from the threshold. Claire stepped in front of Sarah instinctively. The space beyond wasn't a room, it was a void, but not empty. It pulsed. It throbbed with the slow, deliberate rhythm of a heart that didn't belong to any single body, but to the house itself. The walls were slick and fleshy, glistening under the faint light that bled in from the corridor behind. Hair crawled across the surfaces like veins. The floor gave beneath their feet, not stone, not wood, but pliant, like walking on a tongue. Sarah groaned. Claire turned and caught her before she collapsed again. "It's calling me," Sarah whispered. "It's ringing through me." Claire helped her up. "Then we walk faster." They stepped into the room. As they moved, the door sealed shut behind them. The hair wound back across the entrance like muscle memory, locking them in. Somewhere deeper in the chamber, a soft bell chimed once, then again, then 7 times. Each ring felt sharper, like something cutting across the inside of their ears. From above, something descended. It wasn't the tolling thing, not entirely. It was a mouth, but stretched over a bell. Its surface slick and pink, ringed with rows of tiny teeth. It hovered, suspended by chains of woven hair, and it began to hum. The hum wasn't music. It was tuning. Claire dropped to her knees, clutching her head. The vibration pulled at her thoughts, made her blood feel like it was boiling, out of alignment. Sarah was worse. She thrashed, her eyes rolling back, hands clawing at her throat. Claire forced herself to crawl toward her, shielding her sister with her own body. Then, a voice inside her head, not human, not even pretending to be. "You broke the reflection. Now you must break the chime." Claire screamed back into the void. "Tell me how!" The voice responded, calm as bone. "You must offer the bell a new note, a truer tone." Claire's gaze snapped to the shard of mirror still in her belt. She took it. The metal glinted, its surface had changed. It now reflected not her image, but a memory, the attic. Her mother's hand pressed to Sarah's chest, whispering strange syllables, and the first time Sarah screamed in her sleep. The mirror wasn't a mirror anymore, it was a key. Claire stood, dragging Sarah with her, and held the shard toward the hovering mouth bell. The humming shifted. It hesitated. Then the voice inside her whispered, "Cut the song. Let blood speak." With a snarl, Claire slashed her own palm open and smeared the blood across the mirror shard's surface. The shard drank it, absorbed it, and began to glow faintly with inner light. The bell recoiled, chains trembled. Sarah let out a gasp, like surfacing from deep water, and then she stood. Not weakly, not trembling, she stood. Claire stepped back, stunned. Sarah's eyes were no longer silver, they were black, bottomless, but she was smiling. "It's me again," she whispered. I remember all of it." Claire hesitated. "All of what?" Sarah touched her temple. What they buried, what they sealed away with bells and hair and silence. The humming returned, louder now, furious. The bell above began to descend faster. But Sarah stepped forward, raised her hands, and sang. Not a song in words, a vibration, a note. It cut through the air like light. It collided with the bell's hum and shattered it. The bell cracked in midair, the teeth curled inward. It screamed, a wail made of metal and hate and memory, and exploded, splattering the walls with black fluid. The chamber began to shake. Hair receded, light, real light, pierced through fissures in the walls. Claire fell to her knees. Sarah caught her, pulling her upright. "It's not over," Sarah said, "but the song is broken." The walls around them began to collapse, unfold, really, like paper uncrinkling. The false geometry of the house started reversing, and suddenly they weren't in the belly of a creature anymore. They were in the original church crypt beneath the old chapel and bellwether. Candles flickered, stone arches loomed. Dust floated gently in the air like snow, and standing in the far corner was their mother. Still as a statue, her eyes were closed, her lips moved slowly, whispering something in time with the flickering of the candle flames. Claire took a step toward her, heart racing. "Mom?" The woman opened her eyes, and in her mouth hung a small silver bell sewn into her tongue. It began to ring, and from the shadows behind her, the real tolling thing crawled into view. The first sound Claire heard wasn't the bell, but the wet slither of its body against stone, dragging shadow behind it like a wound. It moved in rhythm with the ringing, one chime for every inch it crept forward, each vibration sinking beneath her skin like needles dipped in ice water. Sarah froze beside her. Even in her reclaimed clarity, the sight rooted her where she stood. They weren't facing a hallucination now. This was the origin. The tolling thing was no longer cloaked in suggestion or obscured by layered symbols. It was present, whole, and it was watching. Its face resembled no face at all. A mass of polished bone, stretched skin, and dozens of tiny silver bells stitched into the flesh, swaying gently as it moved. Where eyes should have been were hollow sockets, not empty, but echoing. Every step it took left a ghostly imprint, like the memory of weight on the stone floor. And behind it, still whispering, was their mother. Claire's mind reeled. "She's still alive." "No," Sarah murmured. "She's anchored." Claire turned. "What are you talking about?" "She's what the house used to stay here. She's the final chime, the one they bound to the foundation, to keep the doors open between whatever this is and everything else." Claire blinked. "Then how do we—" Before she could finish, the tolling thing moved. Not fast, not sudden, but direct. The bells in its skin began to ring in a syncopated rhythm, and with each tone Claire felt a part of herself loosen, memories unspooling, thoughts bending. The name Claire became slippery. She knew it, but it no longer felt real. It felt assigned, like a borrowed coat. Sarah screamed, clutching her skull. "Don't listen! It's rewriting us!" Claire clenched her jaw, focused on pain, anything to keep grounded. She dug her nails into her wounded palm until blood welled up again. It helped. The edges of reality sharpened, ever so slightly. They had to act, now. Claire turned toward their mother. The woman hadn't moved. Her eyes remained open, glazed like glass. But as Claire stepped closer, the whispers from her stitched tongue grew louder. They were names, spoken backward, torn inside out, spoken in the house's dialect. Sarah stepped beside her, holding the mirror shard again, no longer a key, but now an anchor of their own. "I think I know what to do," she said. Claire nodded. Then do it. Sarah raised the shard. The light from its surface flared once, blinding, and in the reflected shine they both saw, not themselves, but the crypt as it once was. Stone walls, crosses, the faint warmth of candlelight. Unbroken reality. Then, the light fractured. The tolling thing screamed, a sound that wasn't heard with ears but inhaled. Claire coughed violently, tasting rust and ash. Sarah staggered, the shard vibrating in her hands. "It's resisting," she gasped. "I need more." Claire reached down and tore the silver bell from her mother's tongue. It came free with a snap of sinew and wire, the bell still ringing, but now wild, untethered. Instantly the chamber shook. The ceiling cracked. Voices bled from the walls, chanting, begging, laughing. Claire pressed the stolen bell against the mirror shard. It fused instantly, metal melting into reflection. The shard flared once more, then let out a tone. Pure, untouched. The opposite of the tolling thing's rhythm. The thing howled, the bells in its flesh bursting one by one, silver clattering to the stone like hail. The walls of the crypt peeled away, revealing the skeleton of the house behind it. Its ribs, its sinews, its endless corridors made of memory and grief. The illusion burned, shedding its skin in layers, and beneath it all was nothing. Just a great, waiting void. The absence of form, the silence beneath sound. Claire held tight to Sarah's arm. "We need to end it before it pulls us in." Sarah's voice trembled. "Then we break the last chime." Claire turned to their mother. She was still whispering, even without a tongue. Her breath moved in patterns, ritualistic, involuntary. "She's still in the pattern," Claire said. "Still part of it." "Then we have to wake her," Sarah said. Claire knelt beside her mother and pressed a mirror shard bell hybrid to her chest and whispered, "Come back." Her mother's breath hitched, then she screamed. It was raw, guttural, unbroken, a sound that had waited years to be free. The room reacted instantly. A shockwave burst outward, tearing the remaining illusions apart. The tolling thing stumbled, staggered, its limbs no longer confident. It tried to flee, but there was nowhere left to run. Claire stood. So did her mother. All three women faced the creature. Its skin blistering, bells ringing out of rhythm, its body fraying at the edges. "You have no names left," Sarah whispered. "No echoes." The thing opened its mouth, a final effort, a last chime. But Claire stepped forward and rang the mirror bell herself. One clean note. The tolling thing disintegrated, not in violence but in removal, as if its presence had been an error and the tone corrected it. A flaw removed from the page. Silence returned. Real silence. And then, from behind them, the faint creak of a door, not the house's twisting kind, a real door. The wooden door stood impossibly out of place. Aged pine, brass handle, hinges dulled with time. It didn't groan or breathe like the others, didn't pulse with memory or echo the unending peals of the house. It simply waited. Claire exchanged a glance with Sarah, whose eyes were rimmed with tears but clear. Their mother stood behind them, silent, breathing as if for the first time in decades. Her face was pale, gaunt, but her gaze was lucid. "Is it over?" Sarah whispered. Claire stared at the door, or just paused. The mirror shard bell still trembled faintly in her hand, warm now instead of cold, as if holding the last heartbeat of something that never should have lived. She stepped forward. No wind howled, no voice warned. The silence was whole. Her hand wrapped around the brass knob. Behind her, their mother said softly, "It won't lead out." Claire turned. "What?" "It's not an exit, it's a choice." Sarah's breath caught. What kind of choice? But their mother didn't answer. She lowered herself slowly onto the stone floor, as if her bones finally remembered their age. Her hands lay palm up in her lap, accepting. Claire hesitated, then opened the door. What lay beyond was not a hallway, not a garden, not a sky. It was a corridor of memory. Not her own, not entirely. It rippled with shards, scenes that changed with every blink. A boy crying beside a broken bell. A priest nailing metal runes into bone. A girl laughing as silver threads were woven into her braid, then screaming as they were pulled tight around her throat. Claire felt her knees go weak. This was the house before it was a house. This was the origin, the first sacrifice, the first toll, the first idea that sound could bind, that ritual could replace meaning. Sarah stepped in beside her. "Do you see it?" Claire asked. "Yes," Sarah whispered. "But I think we're meant to walk it." "Why us?" "Because we heard the last chime and lived." Behind them, their mother said, "Every house leaves a hollow when it falls. That hollow must be filled." Claire turned back. "You said this wasn't an exit." "It's not," she said. "It's inheritance." Sarah stepped back. "No, no way. We didn't survive this just to become it." Their mother looked at them with a calm that chilled Claire more than any scream. "The house is dead, but its rhythm remains. It will echo somewhere else to someone else, unless someone carries it knowingly, contains it." Claire shook her head. "You want us to what? Become it?" "I want it to end," her mother said. "But things like this don't die clean. They recycle. Echo unless someone carries the burden into the void and doesn't sing it back." A long silence. Then Claire said, "So we trap it in ourselves?" Sarah looked at her, horrified. "That's not living." "It's better than letting it spread," Claire said softly. The door still stood open. The corridor beyond pulsed faintly now, as if aware of their indecision. Claire stepped through. Sarah caught her arm. "No, not alone." They walked together, hand in hand, into the root of memory. Every step the walls shifted, fragments of the house trying to rebuild themselves around them. A hallway reformed. A bell tower cracked through the ceiling. A child's drawing skittered along the floor like a spider. Claire tightened her grip on Sarah. "Don't let go." They passed through a door made of nothing but whispers, and finally they reached the core. It looked like a bell, but upside down, forged from names instead of metal. Hundreds, no, thousands of names etched along its interior in every language known and unknown. Claire felt her name tugged at, trying to join them. She opened the mirror shard and pressed it against the structure. The chimes stopped, every last one. Silence. And then, the core began to crack. With it, the corridor began to collapse. Walls turning to dust, ceiling folding inward. The memories screamed, not in fear, but in protest. They didn't want to be forgotten. Claire turned to Sarah. "Now, out!" But as they ran, Claire noticed something. Sarah was flickering. Not like a ghost, like a memory. "Claire?" Sarah stumbled. I can't feel my name anymore." "No," Claire breathed. "No, no, stay with me." Sarah's face contorted, not in pain, but in understanding. "I'm not supposed to leave," she whispered. "I'm part of it now." Claire stopped, reached for her, but Sarah was already fading. "You have to finish it," Sarah said. "You're the only one who still remembers the way back." "Sarah," one last smile, then gone. Claire stumbled forward, choking on the ash of dissolving walls, clutching the mirror shard like a lifeline. The house was no longer trying to kill her. It was mourning her. It wanted her to stay, to rebuild. But she ran. Through a hallway of falling bells, upstairs made of salt and breath, past echoes of Sarah's laughter, which now felt like knives, and finally out the door. She fell through it, onto damp grass, night air, crickets, a road she knew from childhood. Behind her, no mansion, no door, just forest. She collapsed, coughing, bleeding, eyes stinging. A whisper in her ear, not her own, not Sarah's, not her mother's, just the last chime. And then, a new sound, far off. A bell. A real one, or not? She looked up. A house stood at the edge of the woods. Not the one she'd burned, but one just like it. And from its attic window, someone was watching her, smiling. Thank you for walking this twisted path with me. Stories like this aren't just about scares, they're about what lingers after the final page, what echoes in the silence when the last bell tolls. If you made it here, it means you listened all the way to the end. And maybe, just maybe, something from the house followed you too. To those who stayed up late, headphones in, lights off, thank you for trusting me with your fear. Every view, every listen, every comment means more than I can say. You kept the house alive long enough for it to tell its story, and maybe now, just maybe, we can let it rest. But if you ever hear a chime in the middle of the night, don't answer. Until next time, sleep well.